of the pond. He is DJ Schweitzer. I am Jeremy Lance, and after I think the longest break we've had as a podcast, we're back.
And not only are we back, but it's for our 10th season of the Pondcast.
Pretty wild.
It is really wild. For nostalgia's sake, I don't know if you guys follow along on Twitter at all, which is probably the most likely way you landed here. I released like our entire first season on our YouTube channel.
Which our YouTube channel is the least likely way you've landed here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we have like 3 subscribers, and that's fine. But
2 of them are us.
Yeah. Regardless, I released the first season, and as a result of that, I listened back to the first couple episodes. And, you know,
Sure.
you go 10 years doing something. One, it blows my mind because those first few episodes, we did it in a radio station, your old radio station. Yeah. And so the audio quality,
I think most of that first season, right?
Yeah, the audio quality was great. And then there's like this stark fall off once we stopped recording. And it felt like it felt very much like that first year podcast. And obviously we were still like finding our flow about how we talked with one another, and I had no clue. I'd really never spoken into a microphone before that experience. And so there was some like genuine growing pains that you could hear as I was mostly going through that. But it was just kind of wild to like go back, and you expect it just to be utter trash, and certainly some of it was, but I was expecting it to be more trashy than it actually was. So if nothing else,
yeah, I mean,
it's the worst backhanded compliment I could give us, but it was fun going and hearing how we weren't too terrible at the very beginning.
I mean, and I think we've mentioned it a million times on this podcast, but like going into that first episode, you and I really didn't know each other that well. Like we had met one time, and that like in person one time, and that was at that Wigan match in Dayton that we've talked about a million times on here. And then other than that, we were like Twitter acquaintances.
Yeah. We'd like slid some DMs back and forth to one another to, you know, sort of prepare for this. And I do remember going in and driving to the station over in Hamilton the first time. And I remember I was like, I could barely hold on to the steering wheel. Like I was so nervous about it for like, you know, no one was really listening at that point in the equation. And I knew that was the case, but you felt like, oh man, this is like a stranger that I'm going to go and literally like, we're going to sit in separate rooms for part of this, and we're going to try to figure this out. Cause there were times when the station's mics were a little funky, and we had to like, you had to sit in the other room for a little bit. And maybe it was just a couple occasions where that had to happen, but it was like also new to me. I was like, what, who? I'm here, but I'm not talking. It really threw me a bit for a loop.
Yeah.
So
no, it's anytime, and it's funny because like we live in a day and age now that like my kids like will make like what I would call a TikTok video. We're not putting them on TikTok, but it's just like them just making videos on like their tablets of them talking, or the Grace likes to just do like dances and stuff like that. Very TikTok-y, but again, there's no internet connected to that tablet that's allowing her to do that. For the most part though, like not everybody experiences that first time turning a microphone on or getting in front of like a camera, and like those are all like you don't think about it until you actually have to do it for the first time, and they're like, ooh, this is kind of daunting.
Yeah, oh yeah. And what's wild is at that point too, we had gone through like this weird emotional swing where we thought we were gonna have a radio show for like a hot minute. And so I was mentally preparing myself for a radio show, and that was so much more terrifying than the actual prospects of a podcast. And when we actually sat down to record, we then knew that it was just going to be a podcast. And I felt like maybe I was carrying in those radio nerves that would have just like, I can't even imagine how jittery I would have actually been had we been broadcasting out of that studio instead of just recording there. But you know, since then we've both done, well, you've done lots of radio, but we've both done lots of radio since then. And it's really not nerve wracking at all. It's just turned into these conversations, but you go back and you hear those first few shows, and I feel like I hear like someone who's very unsure to be speaking into the microphone, despite the fact that I'd for years told people what I thought about the sport, but through Twitter and the blog and all that kind of stuff. But it was a different new experience. And here we are 10 years later. If you had said back then, you'll be doing this soccer show for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
What do you think the likelihood you would believe that to be the case would be? Like, do you think that would be something you would have believed?
I would have found that to be not likely, but sign me up.
Yeah, right. Like 10 years of getting to talk
10
about
years?
soccer.
Yeah. Especially coming from the world of radio where like just nothing lasts very long, like shows and formats and heck, this that you were talking about, we almost became a radio show. The station I was at the time was only a couple months old when that all transpired. Well, like a couple months old when I started working there. And then we had taught my boss was like, hey, we're looking for like local weekend content. And I pitched him the idea and he was like, hey, let's do it. And then like 2 weeks later, corporate was like, hey, we're going to go back to being an R&B station. So you guys are obviously all fired.
Oh my, how quickly.
And so like that station literally only existed in that format for like, I think 8 months, maybe 10. Like that, like a whole radio station didn't even make it a whole year. So like to think that a thing in that medium can go 10 years. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I definitely would not have believed we'd been sitting here recording 10 years later in different rooms again, mind you. We are recording remotely. Yes. Jeremy finds himself in Atlanta. I am here in Cincinnati. But we are back. Let's quit reminiscing here for a little bit and actually get into what people are really here to listen to. And it's not us yammering on about our history together. We're here to talk soccer. And
do we need to plug the fantasy again?
Oh yeah, we do have a fantasy league again. It's back. It's very low stakes. There's really nothing on the line. It's just for the pride of saying you won the league. It's probably not going to be either one of us, so that's at least comforting.
That is something that has also lasted 10 years.
Yes, it certainly has. It is back. I'm not going to give you the code because no one's going to remember the code.
It's on Twitter. It is on Twitter. Just find the tweet.
We'll both tweet it out again just to make your life a little bit easier so that way you can find it. But please join our league. There's just like a couple days left at this point for you to actually do so. And you can make yourself feel better about beating people who pretend to be pundits on podcasts that nobody listens to.
It's pretty easy to do.
That it is. So that is back. But the Premier League is back earlier than normal, about a week earlier than normal.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of everything's sort of making that little shift there. This is going to be an interesting season with that whole, thing, that whole little, World Cup just plopped down.
It's going to be shoehorned into a cranny at the end of the calendar year.
Just dropped in there 1/3 into the season. Just
why not?
You take a month-long break.
They're already doing that in a couple other countries. So
sure. We're gonna take a month-long break, and some of you guys, you will not be relaxing. You'll be playing the most important matches of your life.
Yeah, hopefully you can find some sort of time to rest during that.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. But yes, another season comes. That means another preview show where we make predictions that are often so wrong that most not rehash them at the end of the season, but we actually relish that moment of looking back at how bad we are. So now we get to set ourselves up for that moment again this coming May. We get to look at some terrible predictions. So what do you want to start with? I guess the top 4, we'll get those out of the way.
Yeah, we should. I mean, that's typically how we do it, and no reason to deviate 10 years into this. So top 4 predictions. Do we want to go one by one, or do we want to give our top 4?
Let's just go one by one. We've kind of, I feel like this is once again one of those moments where we're going to have the same top four. I don't know. This year,
I think there's some wild cards that will make this a little bit different than years past.
They're the one of my three I debated on pretty heavily. I feel like the other, obviously two are pretty much slam dunks, but we'll get to that. Your league winner is.
I think it's Manchester City.
Yeah, so I have Manchester City. The rich get richer as they bring in Erling Haaland. We have talked about it for so long about like, man, they really just they still kind of need like just a out and out striker. And I feel like this gives them a moment to really get a guy that could. I feel like you go back to when you had Aguero. This is going to be a guy that has a possibility to score a bucket of goals.
I mean, his goal scoring record at his age it's frankly unheard of. Like people outside of maybe Messi really didn't just hit the floor running and dominated games. And he burst onto the scene and everyone was already raving about him when he was at Red Bull. And then he made this move over to Dortmund, and everyone's like, well, there's no way that he'll be able to keep up this ridiculous pace now that he's playing in a proper league. He's not kicking around in one of Europe's, lesser knowns. He's now in Germany, and oh no, the teenager just kept on chugging along, and now, he basically got to like do a world tour and choose his suitor, like, all the big clubs bent over backwards and made their best offers and pitches to him. And he picked Manchester City. And, that's hardly surprising. They offer one of the biggest checks in the world. I think too, he has an opportunity to cement himself in a way that he maybe couldn't at other clubs. You go to Real Madrid and you have to contend with all the legends that sit above you in the ranks, and you have to live up to all that. You go to a handful of these other clubs, Bayern or Manchester United, and they all have these like rich, storied histories full of badasses. Manchester City's a different story. Yeah, they've had this really meteoric rise over the last 10 years or so, and they're clearly a superpower within the game now, but they still haven't won that prize of the Champions League. And yeah, we both are picking them for our top slot in the Premier League, but they're still eyeballing that. And Holland is there, so they get there.
They still have plenty of spots for shrines of legends.
Yeah,
at that club. My big question is with Manchester City is not just will they win this year, but is this a moment or at least a season where they not only take a step and create a bigger gap between the rest of the league, but even create a bigger gap between them and Liverpool?
I mean, I think the opportunity is there for them, right? But I think too, like the window's rather limited, right? Like they're refreshing players, but they're also like hitting a point, much like Liverpool is to a certain extent as well, where their best players are starting to hit peak and don't have a whole lot of peak years after that. Sure. And yeah, they've got some of these younger guys they brought into the mix who've been big signings and whatever, but they still are very reliant on these like veteran guys who've been around the block and know the song and dance. I think they have to achieve that goal in the next year or two, maybe 3 seasons, or they may miss out on that window, at least with this group. And maybe they have to retool and redo that. But as we've seen, like it's not always a given that that's going to just flow one era into the next. So yeah, I think there's an opportunity to do that, especially given the way that Liverpool haven't been terribly active this summer. Sure, they've made a couple signings and impactful ones at that, and especially when you think of guys like Darwin Núñez. But I think this is the difference maker for City. Like, he's not just an Aguero who's like a guy who can create something. He's a guy that is a lethal finisher. and he can do it with
Mm-hmm.
every part of his body. Like, when was the last time Manchester City had like a body to launch balls to?
Oh, exactly. I mean, now to have that weapon at their disposal, I feel like this allows them to, and this will play into our the conversation about Liverpool. This allows them to hit another gear.
Yeah.
And it it could be a real sight to see how many just how potent this offense becomes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the possibility is there for this team to be one of the most lethal teams in Premier League history.
Mm-hmm.
And that's presuming a lot, right? Like, we've seen Holland make this jump before.
Right.
The Premier League's a different beast than even what Germany is, right? Like, Germany is a bit methodical, and like there's time and space that doesn't exist in the Premier League because of that. The Premier League is like mayhem. It's just like soccer on speed, and everyone's just going too fast. And yeah, they're like executing lots of things within that, but that minimizes your space, your time, your reactions, all that. And Holland's going to have to just continue to pick his level up to continue to produce the way he has. Even if he tails off a little bit, obviously, he could have a 20-goal season, and we would all call that a smashing success. Mm-hmm. But I think some of the expectations are there that, like, hey, he could probably get 30, right? Like, that seems realistic the way he scores goals and the team that he's got behind him. So
he's also got to stay healthy.
That's true.
And I think that's the other big if about the level of City's success is he has shown a little bit of fragileness. He's had some. He's a guy that has had a few little spells of not being healthy. I think he had what some just even last season, right? He was down for a bit.
Yeah, he was.
So especially for a guy that young that's having those somewhat regularly, that's like the big one little like if for me of like. If as long as he stays healthy, this is going to be a very successful thing.
Yeah, the rest of the league cowers waiting for it.
I think I pretty much tip my hand at this point. I have Liverpool in second place.
Yeah, same for me. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not really all that changed from what they've been the last few years. And Sané's gone. And yeah, they've got some new guys who are in to fill those holes. And obviously, we saw, a Jota who's kind of replaced the Bobby Firmino.
Sure.
We've got Darwin Núñez who's come in to basically replace the departing Sadio Mane. I said Sané earlier. Mane is who I meant to say. But regardless, Mo Salah's sticking around. He signed a new contract. But this is the same team. And I feel silly to doubt them. Like it's stupid at this point to be like, hey, maybe this Liverpool team isn't quite what we think it is. But it does feel like there's room to say that in a way that there wasn't in years past.
I feel like this is maybe the second year running where I feel like there just feels like a lingering possibility of a dropping off for them. I mean, not a big dropping off, still a second place finish, still going to be that next group there after City. But you also look at some of the other stalwarts of their team. How many more appearances does like a James Milner have for this side? He's like 36, 37.
Yeah, James Milner probably has another 500 appearances in him.
Fair enough.
He just seems like he's too boring to do anything else. So
that's true. So he just trains
fit. Like apparently he still won their fitness test this year.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Like Jordan Henderson's getting into his 30s.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a guy that eventually they have to kind of cycle out?
Yeah.
So I wonder, do they have that? Like, do they have another gear? Because they're going to need to achieve. It's been shown over the past couple of seasons. They need to hit another gear if they want to catch City.
Yeah. I mean,
do they have that in them?
The years where they've tailed off are the years where City have pulled ahead. Now, obviously there's been some creep and, they've fought their way back in a couple of occasions and even flipped the table. But I think not only do they need to hit that second gear, I think they have to keep everyone happy. And
Yeah.
I think that is actually going to prove more crucial in the long term. I don't know if that will be immediately impactful this season, but if you watch the way the Mane thing went down, you kind of go like, well, no wonder he left. Like, he was watching everyone around him get these fat checks and raises and new contracts, and Liverpool basically were kind of like, well, we'll let you go. And it felt very unbefitting for a guy who had done so much for them as they've reached this peak in this new like renaissance that they've had. And you wonder,
how does that reverberate around the rest of the locker room?
Sure, that. And are people going to start going, well, maybe I want a fresh challenge too? Like I've a guy, and I don't even know that this is true at all, but I'm just going to use him as an example. But like a Trent Alexander-Arnold, yeah, he came up through their academy. Yeah, he's broken into the team. Yeah, he's considered one of the best, outside backs in the world. But he's only been there, really. Is he always going to want to go there? Like maybe everyone kind of always hopes like, oh, this guy will be a one-team player. He's a one-club man. He'll never leave. Well, I mean, he's a young dude. Like maybe he wants to go to Europe and go find himself, as so many people have on that continent over the years. You don't know, but I do think that's something that Liverpool have become this so reliant on this core of players that are they going to be able to keep all these people happy and interested and invested in the process too? And Mane might be that first crack in the veneer of what's going on there.
Yeah, especially if Mane goes and has a great season at Bayern and others start to see like, ooh, maybe the grass is also, is greener on the other side. Maybe, he look at him. He left the Liverpool bubble, and he's still finding that success and that joy and that new challenge. Yeah. There's other things to be had than this club, which obviously can be said about a lot of clubs, but that I feel like that's kind of where some of this Liverpool era is probably at. I don't know. I feel like we've been predicting this for a couple seasons now, and it's happened a bit slower than we've expected.
Probably so. And maybe some bias is creeping in here. I don't know, but it does feel it feels like you can't shake it. You know what I mean? Like it's been a couple years we're predicting it, and it doesn't feel wrong. It just maybe hasn't been as steep of a drop off as maybe we would have expected.
I mean, it's going to happen. It happens to every club that has their moment, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned him. Darwin Núñez is kind of the big flashy signing for them. He's had a hot preseason. Like, what's your temperature on him? How successful do you think this will be this season?
Oh, I mean, he was a fun player to watch in European football over the last couple seasons, and I think he's primed for Klopp football in a way that most of their big time signings have been. I mean, they've really hit well on their signings over the last couple years. So I would anticipate that he'll hit the ground running to a certain extent. The question is can he sustain that? And Mane was just ridiculously consistent. Outside of, I think, last year, he really just pumped in the goals. And that little rivalry that he had with Suarez was super beneficial. Like the two of them were definitely trying to like top one another and within that squad. And it was like a healthy rivalry that pushed them both forward. If Darwin's going to replicate that, I think he needs to find that same type of like sibling rivalry almost with Salah so that he can be like, an instant contributor in a way that Mane was. And if they can't replace that immediately, then maybe that's another portion of the drop-off process.
Fair enough. Who do you have in third place?
And see, this is where I think things might start diverging a little bit.
Okay.
And maybe I'm being overly optimistic here.
Okay. I think I know where we're going here.
Yeah, but I've got my Spurs sitting in third.
Okay. So I have Spurs in fourth.
Okay.
They bring in Richarlison to join the attack with Son and Kane, which is quite tantalizing to think about. You also have who are the other signs? Perisic and who was the guy from Brighton they brought in?
Oh, Bissouma.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's an outside back that's coming in as well, who's I'm failing to think of his name at the moment. Jed Spence. They've made some. I mean, like the Perisic signing is one that you just like. That's not the type of signing that Spurs really typically get. And it feels a little bit like the Van der Vaart signing from a few years back, where it was just like, whew, that's a class of player that doesn't normally end up at Tottenham Hotspur on a transfer.
How'd that one go?
Yeah, and we got him on a free, which was great business too. And I just these are the type of things that get me nervous about a season, because Spurs usually like wait until the end of the window, and like it takes forever for their business to get done, and I'm usually like heading into the season in panic mode. Now I'm feeling uneasy because I feel very confident about the squad that they're building. And I feel like they've added some pieces in addition to the ones they brought in January, like Kulusevski and Bentancur, who have just been huge additions to the squad. I feel like these are going to hit too. And I'm bracing myself for the letdown, because I feel confident, which means I probably shouldn't be.
What's the if Spurs is a soapbox derby car about ready to go down the hill, what's the part of the vehicle that's the shakiest part that you're like, ooh, hopefully that doesn't fall off?
I still feel like I'm nervous about the center back role, and
okay.
They're so vital to Conte's system, and I feel like we have like a rule where only one of our center backs of the three can play well at a time. Like if Romero's having a killer game or stretch, that means like Eric Dyer has lost his shit. Or if like Sanchez is looking okay, then that means Romero like has forgotten how to play as a central defender. And then, we throw in like Ben Davies has become like a critical portion of the squad, when like a year or two ago, I'd have been like, we could probably ship Ben Davies off. So I still feel like that center back position is shaky enough. And I really thought they might actually strengthen this summer in that role. And they haven't really made that key signing there. So if I have to like be picking something that makes me nervous about the team, I think that's probably where it is.
Okay, fair enough. So my third place team is Chelsea.
I had them in fourth.
A season of transition is truly happening there. New owners going out, attempting to make big splashes, making some. Raheem Sterling coming in, which is a pretty tasty addition. He's on that list of like guys that I've always liked, but has always played for a club I definitely root against. You know, so it's quite nice to have him in the right shade of blue this season. And then Koulibaly was brought in. This was the big center back get, one of two ultimately that need to happen, as we've basically let go of a good percentage of our back line with a few more exits to come. That one's an exciting one. Now, granted, I think he's going to be well up for it. I think he's going to be a great addition and a very solid center back to have. I also am well aware of this is a guy that we have been rumored to sign for about 4 years now.
Yeah, right. I feel like that link has been there. And when you read back, like, here's who their signings were over the summer, I felt like I was like, this should have happened years ago.
Yeah. So you have those two additions. Those are nice. Those are good. There were other additions that were supposed to happen, about 3 or 4. 2 of them completely hijacked by Barcelona and their leveraged assets that may or may not even still exist at this point.
Their financial levers. That's like a phrase that I never heard utilized in soccer until this summer. And maybe it's just because Barcelona are like the first major club to really be in the financial muck in quite a while. And I don't like the term is stupid, but it's also like, how are they allowed to do this? They're technically not even allowed to register any of these players. So I just don't understand how they keep making signings.
Well, and it's like, not only are they doing it, but like their freaking president or whatever, Laporte, like just arrogantly goes out into the media and just talks just Trump-like nonsense about how all is well and we're just doing the right things here, and I don't know. Like I've never had a reason to root for the demise of Barcelona, but we're absolutely there now.
It was all over Rafinha.
Oh,
How
please.
dare they?
I mean, that was one that was really frustrating because it looked like that one was essentially wrapped up, and then Barcelona just comes in. And yes, of course, it's not a knock against Chelsea. Like, Barcelona is like,
it's still Barcelona.
It's still the apex of like club football as far as like where guys want to go, right? Like,
yeah,
the majority of players.
You think of like a Brazilian player, right?
Yes.
Like,
the apex is Barcelona.
They're trying to go to Barcelona or Madrid and like recreate their childhood dreams.
Yeah. So I mean, losing out on 2 signings because they were hijacked, and then having like the being the other team in discussion as far as like Lewandowski, Dembele before he signed his contract. Like, it's been a frustrating offseason from that standpoint. Sounds like Tuchel and Bowley are now going to hold this over Barcelona's head and not let them have Azpilicueta and Marcus Alonso for pennies on the dollar like they had originally thought they were going to get.
Right.
So good luck to them on that. So it sounds like we still have a lot of outgoing players. Azpilicueta looks to be the guy on the way out. Marcus Alonso looks to be on the way out. Where they end up going, it'll probably end up being Barcelona. We'll just make them sweat it out a little bit more. It'll be really interesting to see. We had Reece James and we had Ben Chilwell, and they were supposed to take over as the starting fullbacks last season. And both of them went down. Obviously Chilwell was basically just, his season got toasted pretty quickly and he was just done for. Reece James was just a revolving door of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And so you ended up going back to Azpilicueta and Alonso. So we're finally at that point, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that Chilwell and Reece James stay healthy and that we can finally get that tandem that we were supposed to get last year, see how that goes, how they mix in with this new center back pairing that's not finalized, because there's still another piece to be brought in for that. And then you look at the attack, last year was all about, we brought in Lukaku, and this offseason was like, how soon can we get rid of Lukaku? And we did. And he goes away. He goes back to Napoli. Fine, good riddance. You're on a loan that's
Inter.
It lasts forever. Inter. Yeah. You're on a loan that can last forever as far as I'm concerned. But the replacement piece has not happened yet.
Yeah.
So, and with that, you also have Timo Werner is apparently being shopped, essentially. Juventus, obviously a potential swap deal with Leipzig. Like, he looks to be on the way out. Somehow, because of all of that, Christian Pulisic has just dodged bullets and he's just still there. He was marked for the exit at the beginning of the offseason.
I really feel like he would be gone if all of this had gone the way they had planned.
Right. I mean, you brought in Sterling. Like,
it's not looking good for Christian in that regard. Like, I'm genuinely a little nervous for him. Like, what does this mean?
He's going to be great at West Ham.
He really will. That does seem like the club for him, doesn't it?
Dude, him and Moyes?
Oh, dude. It really does. He just feels like he would slot right in with that fan base a bit too.
Oh, yeah. No, it'll be funny though, because what will happen is he'll, like, in an early interview he'll mention Green Street Hooligans, and that'll go over very poorly with the actual fan base of that club.
I mean, I pray for that on almost a season basis. Like, I want someone to be that stupid just once.
But yeah, so Chelsea still has a lot of question marks. Backline, still a work in progress. Attack, still a work in progress. Other than that, We got Mendy. That's cool.
Sure.
Tuchel's still there. He's calling pretty much all the shots at this point, even from a player, acquisition standpoint. I don't know. I think optimistically, I think this is a top 4 season. Not worried about it. But in the back of my head, there is the possibility that this could be a really bad season.
I mean, I've definitely wavered on a choice of putting them in the top 4. And if it weren't for the fact that all the other top 4 contenders all have like some fatal flaws or some evolutionary stuff that's happening within them, I would feel like they probably would slip out of it. And maybe if some of those teams, find their feet, let's say Ten Hag, gets Manchester United clicking and they, maybe convince Ronaldo that he should stay, or, they convince him to go and then they find a better solution where they aren't having to play around like this guy whose ego is larger than everyone else's combined. Maybe Arsenal can, turn Gabriel Jesus into a risen character, and he will turn into the player that we all thought he might be at Manchester City. Seems not that likely, but I mean, who knows right now? Like, I think that's one of the things that we're kind of waiting to see with some of these teams in that chasing top 4 pack, your Arsenals, your Manchester Uniteds, West Ham, if they can build off of their previous campaigns. There's definitely space to wiggle into the top 4 this year that didn't necessarily exist in years past. And I think at the end of the season last year, we were almost watching teams trip into 4th. Like, who wants it? And Spurs somehow slid in there. I think they've built from them, on from that point and should find themselves a little bit more comfortable. But, I think 3rd's even up for grabs to a certain extent as well. So I feel like that as dialed in as we are in the top 2, like below that, it could be a little bit chaotic.
Yes. I think chaotic is a very apt word for that. Let's do this real quick. Let's go a word about the others.
Okay.
Before we get to relegation. Let's do a word on Arsenal, which I think, listen, they're having a great off season and great preseason in that they're winning a bunch of games that don't matter.
Right.
But I mean, you can watch that fan base is getting gassed up like no other right now.
They really are. They are doing a very Arsenal-y thing here, I feel like, where
this is so Arsenal.
Their expectations are just sailing to the moon right now.
Yeah, like they're just gassing themselves up because of these preseason wins, which like even they make fun of the fact that they make too much of preseason wins, but like they legitimately make too much in preseason wins.
They still do.
It literally
just
does happen.
Just because you're recognizing it doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Doesn't make it less wrong. But they're flying high in the preseason. And to be fair, that doesn't count for nothing as far as like how we should perceive a team's ability. Doesn't mean everything, but doesn't mean nothing. Does this squad that is flying high in preseason, do they actually have the pieces to matter this season? And by matter, I mean like in the top 4 fight for the thick of it.
I don't want them to, but there does seem to be some maturing within that group, right? Like I feel like they've been very young. Arteta is a bit learning on his feet and has shown himself to be, someone who's definitely learning the ropes a bit on being a head coach as well. You would expect that they should all mature and improve a little bit. I have doubts about that. I do feel like they have some guys that just don't seem like they're the product that Arsenal used to have. And the type of player that they used to land doesn't seem to desire them in the same way that they did in the past. So I feel like they're a team that's kind of like living off their prior reputation a little bit. And I feel like it's inaccurate because they're not built the same way. They're not the same, free flowing, expansive side that, they were necessarily in Wenger's heyday. I don't know. I feel like they're still lacking it. And maybe it'll all come together this year and it'll all gel. And they'll be a force to reckon with again. I'm sure they're all expecting that, but until they actually do that, I am going to remain skeptical.
Fair and ditto. I agree. Totally. Speaking of skepticism, a word about Manchester United.
Okay.
Roster seems to be kind of a mess. Ten Hag is. I mean, listen, he's there. There is a lot of people, especially in the United supporter ranks, due to others that have come before him, that are skeptical of handing the wheel to another Dutchman.
Sure.
You also have the fact that your star player, Cristiano Ronaldo, sounds like potentially on the verge of going into Operation Shutdown.
Yeah. Maybe.
And just possibly not even showing up and playing and just kind of walking away. Unfortunately for him, he has too fine of tastes of clubs he would like to go to, and nobody else wants him.
Well, it's not just that nobody else wants him. It's such a complicated situation with him because you can't just bring Cristiano Ronaldo in and be like, dude, like, with all due respect, you're almost 40 and like we see the value in you, but you're going to start on the bench. Someone needs to communicate that to him, because maybe you'll give him his starts, every other game or whatever. You work him into the rotation, but you can't run an entire offense around Ronaldo any longer.
But he's just not a guy who I don't think will ever be okay with the club and the whole attack not being about him.
I don't disagree. And the other part of the equation is he is like unwilling to budge on his wages.
Yeah,
or at least that's what it seems like. So he wants to be paid mega, and he wants to be at a club that's mega, and he wants to be the dude within that mega setup. And all that equation doesn't add up the way it used to. Like, I feel like the last time we got that Ronaldo was his last season at Juventus, where like they were like, all right, cool, we're gonna run the attack around you. And they allowed him to play as that central forward, and he could do it in Italy. I just don't think he has the pace any longer and the sustained fitness to run the 9 up top for Manchester United any longer in the way that they need to be successful. And I doubt that he's going to find suitors, and I don't think he's willing to lower himself to an MLS contract at this point.
We'll end with hitting on one other club before we go to relegation. We'll talk about Everton, which may be in relegation talks, so that's a good segue, I guess.
Sure.
A word on Everton. I just wrote, are they gonna be okay?
It's a great question that I don't think anyone knows the answer to, because last year was an unmitigated disaster. Like, right? Like there's no getting around that. They haven't. What have they done this summer to improve that?
They lost Richarlison. So they did that. Frank Lampard is getting more bald.
Okay.
So there's that. I don't know if that's good. Like a Pep thing, if you want to physically turn into Pep. I don't know. Otherwise. Yeah, there's a handful of question marks to be had there. I mean, they spent big money on Dwight McNeil from Burnley. They dropped £26 million on Dwight McNeil.
I mean, they also signed James Tarkowski, who is a center back from Burnley. I mean, I don't know.
They understood Burnley's season didn't go well last year. Right?
That's what I was going to ask. Like, I feel like they're unaware.
It went worse than theirs.
Yeah. I mean, they signed a goalkeeper from Sporting. They signed a left back from Standard Liège. They signed a defensive midfielder from CSKA Moscow. Another left back from Sporting CP. So these are all guys that are prospects. And I guess you're not going to like buy a veteran who's going to lurch, Everton out of this. But you do feel like they need some people who know the Premier League. And
that's a good idea.
Might be familiar with the dogfight and scrap that comes along with that. And I just, I'm looking through this and there's just nothing that's so promising that you're like, Frank's got it figured out. Like Frank's.
No, I feel like he's not being given the resources he is being set up for failure.
Yeah, it's because they've spent so wildly over the last few seasons.
Yeah. The club was rumored to be for sale over the summer, which the ownership fought against and said, no, it's not for sale. Sounds like it probably should be for sale. Yeah. Maybe for the longevity of the club.
Well, they're in the middle. They're in the middle of building a new stadium too. And I
feel like that might, you need resources for that.
Well, and maybe that's creating the pinch as well that prevents them from being more active.
Sure. How many years did Arsenal claim that?
Quite a few, up until recently, even. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot to contend with there for them, and they're certainly not going to be in the top 4 equation this year. We'll say that much.
Okay, so let's go to the bottom 3 equation then.
Well, hold on real quick. We've got a few listener picks that are in there.
Okay, let's go to the listener picks.
So yeah, we put out some requests and we got a few responses back. So we saw a lot of, the similarities here. Most everyone who replied had City and Liverpool in the top 2 slots. In fact, 2 of the 3 did. Jeff Tebbets, our good buddy from Cincinnati Soccer Talk, he had Tottenham in second, which he's a Spurs fan as well. So
sure,
maybe a little overly optimistic, but hey, I like how Jeff's looking forward here a bit. He also had Arsenal in the top 4. He and Rupesh Sharma, Rupesh had them all the way up in Arsenal in third, and then Matt Morris, he had West Ham, and then this is definitely the wildest pick of our top 4 suggestions, Newcastle.
I mean, we'll get to bold predictions on. I have a bit about Newcastle in my bold predictions.
I have one as well. So
ooh, it might be very similar.
Yeah, it might be. So let's head over to that relegation scrap then.
So for me, I'm just gonna give you my 3, and then we can go back through.
Cool.
Bournemouth, Brighton, Fulham.
Ooh, Brighton.
Yeah, I don't like them.
Okay.
They do not. Listen, they had a really good season last year. I don't see them duplicating that, and I actually see them. I don't know. I have no reason to think that they're going to keep that up. And yeah.
Okay. I like how bold that is. So
I mean, listen. So Brighton made not very many signings yet. They're about to lose one of their best players to Chelsea. Sounds like
they lost Basuma to Spurs.
Boom. And possibly jail.
Hey. I don't think he's the guy that's been linked all summer long, though.
I think he had his own links.
Yeah.
They are basically at this moment, just if you look at what they brought in, they are pinning a good amount of their hopes on striker Julio Enciso, who they bought from the Paraguay top division.
Yeah, that's a
little. So a striker from the league in Paraguay.
Okay.
That's going to be their white knight. That's going to be the guy that's going to score their goals and see them out to safety.
All right.
That's problematic. Bournemouth has done basically nothing. They are rolling into town with a championship side, and that is not going well.
I know he's not.
It rarely
there.
does.
I know he's not there, but I want Eddie Howe to be there. Like I just feel like he needs to leave Newcastle and go back now.
And then Fulham, kind of the same thing. Fulham's a yo-yo club. This is what they do.
Yeah,
they come up, they go down.
They go down.
Them and Norwich just kind of sit there and hold the door for each other.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, I know. They're just taking turns. It's like the grandpa meme from The Simpsons, right? Yeah. Like just walk in, put their hat on the rack, turn around, grab their hat, and go back out the door. Like that's definitely Fulham.
Your relegation 3.
My relegation 3. So I had Bournemouth and Fulham in there as well. I felt like those were pretty easy picks. The other team that I had in there is one I feel like has been flirting with the drop a few years in a row now, and that's Southampton. And
that was the other one that was debated, that one for a while there.
I feel like as much as I like Ralph Hasenhüttl and what he was doing there for a while, I just feel like they're on a downward trajectory. They were incredibly poor at the end of last season. Like, I just outrageously bad. And it was like that they had a decent first half of the campaign that bailed them out. Like, they were trying to get themselves relegated and they just missed it. So I feel like they're going to find themselves in the thick of it probably early on, especially since they've really not done a lot themselves to bolster.
Yeah, I almost want Hasenhüttl sack race winner.
Ooh, yeah, that's probably not a bad shout.
Because, I mean, if you're right, I mean, if they continue to play the way that they finished last season, that's going to be a real rough start. And you could see ownership just going like, hey, if we're going down, let's just hit the eject button on this whole thing now.
Yeah. I mean, you could totally see it happening. From our listener picks, nobody picked Brighton, by the way. Just tossing it there for you.
So I'm the only one that's just down bad on Brighton.
Maybe you're seeing through the clouds and we're all just, looking towards the sun a little bit and are blinded here. But we did see all three of our respondents all pick Nottingham Forest, the newly promoted side, to go back down. I maybe this is me just being nostalgic, especially with Forest and Leeds now in the league together.
Mm-hmm.
I want 90s football to stick around a little bit longer. And
exactly.
I just don't want them to go down. And I don't know really a whole lot about them going into the season outside of the fact that they have been so close to promotion for like the last 6 years running. And I'm stoked that they're up, and I want them to get a little bit more time in the sun before they go back down.
I'm exactly with you there. Like, Nottingham Forest, I've been rooting for their promotion back into the Premier League for years and years just to have that back. So I definitely don't want them to leave immediately.
Yeah, I'm not prepared for that quite at this point. We did see Rupesh, who's a Liverpool supporter. He picked Everton to go down, so he's the only one who did that. But
it's not a wild shout there.
It's really not. It's not. Should we go to Dark Horse Club at this point?
Yes.
Okay. This is always a tough one.
I'm going to take a guess that you and I picked the same club.
We'll have to wait and see.
I picked Leeds.
Oh, see, I wanted to do that, but I feel like we're not that lucky in America. Like, I feel like that's not how things go for us in the Premier League. I think I'm way too excited about the prospects of America's team, as I'm going to dub them all season. They are the new America. Like, Fulham have been booted out of this spot.
Yeah.
And they are firmly in that position now.
They out-America'd Fulham by just a country mile.
They really did.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm excited to see Tyler Adams in the Premier League. I'm excited to see Brendan Aronson. Did you see that
pass? Oh my God. It was so good. I'm a huge Brendan Aronson believer, by the way, like, cannot be more on his train. And I think if there's one American who's landed in the league this year, I feel like he's the guy that is primed to just fit in well.
Yeah, no, I think he's going to flourish pretty quickly in this league and have himself a nice one.
I'm hoping so.
Okay, so you didn't pick Leeds. Who is your dark horse?
So this one, again, I always feel like this is a tough one because when you say dark horse, like, the traditional definition means they're going to like challenge for the title or something. And we're clearly not picking Leeds or whatever I'm about to say here.
We've just broadened it to like have a good season, have a top half finish, have a challenge for European places, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and it's like someone you expect to punch better, above where they're supposed to be, right? Like, that's kind of what we're looking at here. So on those terms, I really thought about it here, and I landed on Crystal Palace.
Oh,
yeah.
Also bringing an American in this year.
They are, yeah. Not necessarily because of the American, but more because I really like what Patrick Vieira is doing with that team. I think he's bringing a different mentality than what they're used to having. And while they're not like making these really marquee signings or even really that many to begin with, they've been improving, and I think it's within the realm of possibility that they could potentially flirt with European places this year. I don't think that's so unrealistic. Now, I also don't think it's unrealistic that they could go down. I think all the pieces could fall off, and they could hit the floor and not recover. So I think both of those things are within the realm of possibility. And then oddly, the other team that I was really leaning on, it was actually Brighton. I've been impressed.
So I'm just really out on my own here on this Brighton relegation pick.
You might be onto something here, because they've been on this trajectory that's upward for the last couple of years, and it seems illogical for them to continue that. So at least as far as how Premier League history typically works out. So we'll see which one of the two of us was closer to reality come May.
Especially when Graham Potter takes that Arsenal gig in February.
Ooh, or Conte gets sick and he finally, is like enough with
Had
Spurs.
enough. The January window, he got nothing.
Yeah. So we'll see. Golden Boot.
Listen, we talked about it at the top of the show. It could be real good numbers from Holland if things are clicking there for City, which I think most of us expect them to. So yeah. I'm going Erling Haaland.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely someone who's going to be in the mix. I think you've got some key players, right, that we've gotten very used to seeing over the last few years be at the top of the charts, and I think they're going to be very much in those positions again. I went with just easy peasy here. I went with Mo Salah. A, because he does it all the time. And B, with Mane now gone, that definitely takes out of the equation. Like, he's now the top dog there. Like, there's no dispute. Mo Salah is the dude at Liverpool now. So that means the penalty, like, he mostly had the penalties anyway, but the penalties his. Like, any chance for free flowing is going to, like, people are going to be looking for him as opposed to necessarily.
Right, it's going to play off of him.
So I feel like that just funnels him into a position of potentially getting more goals or at least more looks than what he's had in years past.
Okay. Manager of the year, I went super basic and just said Pep Guardiola.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a safe bet there. Especially if they can, like, overwhelm the league in the way that some of us think is potentially possible. I also went with one that's a bit of a layup. I went with Conte. Like, I think if Spurs, he really turned them around in the second half of last year. But
if Spurs finish top 3, he's a slam dunk for it.
I think that's almost like a no-brainer. Like, people won't look past that, even though it's probably a little bit more expected here. But so the flip side of that coin, good manager to bad manager. Who wins the sack race?
So my sack race prediction will also bleed into one of my bold predictions. My sack race winner, Brendan Rodgers.
Oh, boy. See,
here goes bold prediction number 1. I think Leicester City is going to take a massive step backwards.
I think so, too. I'm, like, really contemplated flirting with putting them in my relegation slots.
I mean, I think they will finish outside of the top 10.
I think that's almost a certainty. I think top 10 is like what they'll be aiming for European places, but I think that's almost ludicrous at this point. And
they're going into the season. They don't have sounds like they won't have their starting keeper come this weekend possibly. Kasper Schmeichel is going to Nice, I think it is, or whatever.
Is he really?
Yes.
That is mind blowing. I mean, that guy deserves Champions League football. So, I mean, good for him.
Yeah.
But man, I mean, it seems he's been such a fixture there.
Yeah.
There's also been talk that they might have to sell Madison, which would be extremely problematic for them. It feels like all the air in that balloon has escaped. Like,
Vardy's gonna have a bad season because he's gonna have to deal with a real grumpy Gus at home. So who lost her case.
Yeah, she really did, and he's just gonna be so distracted from running, Rochester, New York FC.
He
might want to MLS Next League.
Yeah, he might want to check in on them because they just got rolled by FC Cincinnati 2, which is, I think, one of the bottom feeders of that league.
Yike. Yeah, I think that's a great shout. The only person who I feel like is even remotely in the discussion to challenge that, and to be fair, the bet sites were very high on Brendan getting canned here.
Yeah, soon. I checked that. I was actually pretty surprised with that.
But like this is a layup pick. I'm going to go into one of my bold predictions here as well. I don't think Frank Lampard sees it. I don't think he sees the month of October.
I just think people just constantly want Frank Lampard to get sacked at everything he does.
I don't want him to get sacked, but if we're looking, and I think we said this at the end of last year too, if we're looking at like, again, Gerrard and Lampard comparisons, and you had to pick the better manager of those two, it's not even like remotely close, is it?
Sure. No, it's not. It's not.
I think what really happened is that Gerrard did.
Well, Gerrard also went. Yeah, he also went somewhere.
He went somewhere else.
Won.
Well, he went to a good league for that, right? Like you go to Celtic, and it puts you in a position where you're one of the top two,
right?
But it also gets you into European conversations, right? And so he then gets this opportunity to learn on a European level, which you don't necessarily get all the time if you're an up and coming manager. And Frank had his time at Derby, but
right. That's not the same as, getting Rangers their first title in X number of years.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a situation where I think Frank just doesn't have it in his kit yet. And, maybe if he went back down and took a smaller job, I really felt like after the Chelsea job, that's what he should have done. Like he should have just gone back into the championship and, found a team that's potentially fighting to come up and do that. And I know that's a lot more risky, but I think you learn more in that situation than you do trying to swim with the big dogs. And it seems to me like he just doesn't even know how to swim at all.
Listen, as soon as he finally gets that San Jose Earthquakes gig, you're going to see him flourish.
That really is in his future. That's in his future.
MLS is, especially the way this thing has been going for him, is 1,000% in his future.
Yes, I don't disagree with you at all. We did get a few sack race predictions in here too, so I feel like we should probably share those. Jeff Tebbets thinks that we're going to see Steve Cooper from Nottingham Forest get the sack first. Rupesh Sharma also had a good pick here. I think Lage from Wolves is definitely someone who could find themselves in that equation, depending on how things go.
I thought about that one. Yeah.
Our good buddy Matt Morris, he also threw out one. Eric Ten Hag. I thought that was a spicy take, but probably not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, that may reappear in my bold predictions.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's get to those bold predictions. I already said one of mine. I think Leicester City is going to take a massive step backwards. What was yours?
Mine was Frank Lampard doesn't see the month of October.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, according to the betting sites, that's not a bold prediction at all.
Well, I suppose that's true, but from a shockwave standpoint, it would certainly send a few.
Yeah. Oh no, that'll change some things.
Yeah.
Let me give you another one. I just mentioned the whole Ten Hag thing, so I'll throw that one out. I think Manchester United finishes mid-table, and I think Eric Ten Hag and or the board at United are looking to end that whole situation come springtime.
But I mean, where do they go now?
I don't know.
Pochettino.
It's been an I don't know for over a decade. Yeah. Why would it stop? Why would it stop now?
I suppose that's very true. Definitely a realistic possibility. I'm going to make my second one here. And this is going back to, we were talking this weird kind of season where the World Cup is going to throw everything into disarray. I think there are going to be several major stars within the Premier League, if not Europe, but definitely within the Premier League, that will suffer major injuries either during the World Cup or in the immediate aftermath.
Right. That'll see them out for the majority of the second half of the season.
Yeah, and really potentially have an impact on all these things we're talking about: title races, top 4 finishes, relegation races. I can't imagine that we're not going to see something like that unfold because of all these games being smashed into such a tight period.
That's why the Erling Haaland pick works so well. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Scandinavian countries' track record at World Cups.
He's going to have all that time, yeah.
50 years has not gone all that well. What about your third bold prediction?
So my third bold prediction, I have a sneaking suspicion that you have one similar to this. I think you alluded to this. Maybe I was completely wrong. I think Newcastle flirts with the bottom again. And I think come mid-season, come post-World Cup, whatever, I think this new ownership that has the ability to just fire the money cannon at anything. I think they blow it up. I think they fire Eddie Howe and they spend like drunken sailors
to bring in Brendan Rodgers
in January. Oh, maybe bring in Rodgers. Yeah, they're just gonna go just buck wild in January.
I had a very similar third bold prediction in that Newcastle will make a head-turning signing in January.
Yeah, no, I definitely think I think that even if they don't have a bad season, I think that's on the horizon. That's going to happen at some point at one of these windows here soon. Newcastle's going to start to fire off those big money moves.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably. Right? I can't imagine it's not going to be. I was wondering if the Robinho move to Manchester City, because that was arguably their big head turner move. Like, yeah, they'd gotten like Carlos Tevez and Mascherano, or excuse me, not Mascherano, but Tevez and, a couple other players before that kind of felt, biggish, maybe Adebayor. But like Robinho landing there, like everyone was like, what? Including Robinho. So I think it could be that style of signing that just catches everyone off guard. Doesn't necessarily mean it'll be impactful, but yeah, I feel like this is the season where they're like, all right, we're gonna get involved and do some stuff and rinse this cash.
It's gonna happen, as long as they don't spend too much of it on live golf. They'll be able to make it happen there.
I feel like they can probably afford both.
Okay, that's true. I mean, they're not spending that $800 million for Tiger Woods, so they got some coin to throw around.
There's a little bit left over in the tank. I think that's it for our Premier League predictions. Should we, pay a little bit of attention to the domestic game before we call it quits?
Yeah, obviously, normally we have a few podcasts in the summer, and we kind of dive in on some of the comings and goings and happenings and moments of the MLS season, but we didn't do that. So we have a little bit of catching up to do. So let's kind of just fly through a few of the big things that have happened since we last recorded, as far as just MLS, just big moments. Your guy, Gareth Bale, is stateside.
He is.
Him and Chiellini have joined LAFC. I mean, how do you feel? How do you feel about Gareth Bale? Like, in MLS, this is a player who was, alleged, all the jokes and all the criticisms that he's been semi-retired for a couple seasons. So doesn't help the wash away the whole retirement league vibe that this league used to have.
Yeah. I think that's inspired some mixed feelings about the signing for me, for sure. I refuse to believe that when Gareth Bale was presented, like his people were approached about this, and Gareth was finally dragged into the conversation when they felt like it had gotten far enough along. I can't imagine that they weren't like, look, like LA's got some dope golf courses, and you're gonna fly all over the country, and there will be golf courses that are great everywhere that you go.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to play at all these great, like, I can't imagine that wasn't a part of the discussion. And to me, I thought for sure he was going to retire. Like, he's just going to kick on for the national team through the World Cup, and like, he'd be like sayonara, everyone. That I've got my membership at somewhere that I need to go tend to.
Like just cuts off the man bun and leaves it on the field and walks off.
Yeah, or just keeps growing. One of the two. As he balds around it. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting. Like I'm pissed that LAFC came to Cincinnati before he signed, because it's like
didn't time that well at all.
They won't be back next year, that's for certain. So yeah, I think my opportunity to see him is potentially closed, but it's exciting. I mean, and what's wild is like Chiellini being there too. This has been a summer where MLS has flexed its financial muscle within the game a little bit again, and we're kind of seeing this new wave of big time signings showing up.
You got Toronto going all Italian.
Yep. Lorenzo Insigne, who we knew was coming last season, and Bernardeschi as well. Both have arrived and made immediate impacts within that Toronto squad that needed immediate impacts. And
their impact was so good it actually woke up Michael Bradley from his slumber, and he was like scoring goals.
Yeah, like barely. I thought he just yelled at people anymore. He just seems like a suburban Toronto dad that is upper middle class. But they're making some moves. This one's just hot on the presses. Rui Puig or Ricky Puig, who plays for Barcelona, is making the move over. A young 22-year-old, many considered still a prospect, a bright one at that within the game. Choosing MLS at this point in his career is a huge, seismic potentially move for a player who's 100% still trying to fight to get into the Spain squad coming up for the upcoming World Cup. So I think that's one of those potential needle movers, like in the long term.
And a player that would definitely have his suitors all across Europe.
Oh yeah. He's definitely not someone that like Chelsea and, Liverpool and, City were sniffing around at this point, but there were top division sides all over the place that were chasing for him. So that potentially feels seismic. And then the other one, it's not necessarily a player move, but Wayne Rooney coming back to DC United.
Dude, he comes into DC United with his old man beard and immediately blows up the team. Like, Julian Gressel, you go to Vancouver. Bill Hamid, F off.
We're bringing in David Ochoa, who's one of the biggest punks in MLS. Yeah. It feels very
and Ravel Morrison.
Oh, did he really bring in Ravel Morrison?
Yeah.
As a player?
Who was playing with him at Derby? He was playing for him at Derby.
Oh, that's incredible. Oh, that has so much potential. I had no clue that Ravel came along with him.
I don't know if he's shown up yet, but that's an official move. Oh, that has happened.
I missed that, and I am overjoyed with that information. That is just the possibilities of Ravel melting down somewhere in the United States has just so much amazing meme potential.
He came in on a free, so
yeah. You would have to get him on a free for it to make much sense. The thing is, I went and watched DC United in person a couple weeks ago in the capital. Made my first trip to Audi Field. It's a cool spot to watch a game. This DC United side is really bad, outrageously, tremendously crappy, and I just, as good of a, maybe they had to have been the United executives were like, well, he did a good job with that Derby team on a shoestring budget,
a shoestring budget and paychecks that didn't show up.
Right. At least he knows that his players will be getting checks cut each week. So
yeah, that helps.
But it's just been a big summer of arrivals in Major League Soccer, if nothing else.
I get, one of the other things to throw in there that we need to talk about is the local side, FC Cincinnati. Not garbage.
They're not bad this year. What a novel concept.
Currently hanging on to a playoff spot. Currently with multiple. They have a Golden Boot candidate in Vasquez, and they have an MVP candidate in Luciano Acosta. Brenner has shown up.
it's a different squad, I feel like, than what we've seen in Cincinnati's very short MLS tenure. And I think, I think you and I were both very optimistic about the final turn that FCC made this offseason to get these types of people into the positions they needed them in. And Chris Albright and Pat Noonan have proven to be exactly what we've said they've needed from the start, which was people running the show that know what the hell they're doing and
that know the league and know how to be successful within the league.
We're not talking about, a Ron Yans or it's another collection of Dutch people who have really had no success anywhere. Like they've just middled around in wherever they've worked to the lower end of the spectrum. These aren't necessarily guys who are just, at the top of the game. They were guys who came in and, they were probably affordable and, knew how to play some money ball in Europe. But this is MLS, and it's a different beast with different mechanics and different intricacies. And you need people from here that know how it all works and have found success here. And weird, the guys who have found success here have been successful. So
yeah, and have been part of the league forever, essentially. Back to when they were players.
Literally, I remember watching both of them. And Chris Albright played in Columbus for a while. These are people that I grew up watching. So of course they know MLS, and they've been in a club at Philadelphia that knew how to game the system in the league. And at times FCC were getting gamed by them, and it's not surprising that they ended up back in that corner again, and it's worked out. And if there's one part of the team that I feel like you can look at, Brandon Vasquez is so obvious, right? He's just oh, you give the kid a chance and he's scoring goals. That feels like the narrative there. Lucho Acosta, though, I feel like is the one that really defines how different of an FC Cincinnati team we're dealing with versus the previous campaigns. Lucho's ability was never in question, right? Think back to his DC United days when he was playing with Wayne Rooney. If he had the pieces around him, he could be a successful player. I don't think he had the right pieces around him in previous incarnations. And he has a coach that knows how to get that out of him now and how to make him an effective player in Major League Soccer. And he's an MVP candidate this year, where last year he was an overexpensive waste of money DP. And the difference between the two is a player who's engaged and bought into the process. And Lucho feels infinitely more bought in to the system that they're playing in now than he ever did in any of the previous managers that he played under here.
Yeah, so we'll see how they keep her going. But I mean, at the moment, they look like they may ultimately fall victim to death by 1,000 draws. But
yeah, sometimes that happens. But that's better than a death by 1,000 losses,
which is what we were used to for 3 seasons.
Hey, being relevant is way better than being completely irrelevant.
Absolutely. Put that on bumper sticker.
That's right.
The other thing we got to mention is a little hat tip to Sacramento Republic, becoming the first club since the Rhinos and whatever year that was to make it to the U.S. Open Cup final.
Yeah. And Rhinos, ironically, were the last non-MLS team to win it as well.
And that was in 01, 2000, something like that?
Maybe 99 or somewhere around that range. But it's been a long time. And, I think back to FCC's run to the what was that, the quarterfinals a few years back, and when they were in the USL, and that was just an amazing story. And the US Open Cup had this little hiatus where it went away for a couple of years, and now it's back, and it delivered us not only this Cinderella Sacramento run all the way to the final, which the semifinal against Sporting KC was it was a long match without many goals, but the penalties were worth every ounce of staying up as late as you had to for it.
Oh, but even that, the whole match though, it was so open the entire match.
It was amazing that we went 120 minutes without a goal. Truly amazing. Fabulous. But we also had Union Omaha, who's a USL League One side, who made it really deep into the tournament as well. And It's just a testament to how great this tournament is and how sucky it was that it went away for a couple of years, that we're seeing these teams get to have these awesome moments. And man, I tweeted this out, like, if you're not rooting for Sacramento, like, you're a monster. Like, how unless you're an Orlando fan who's going to be hosting the final, like, there is absolutely no reason that you shouldn't be rooting for the Sacramento Republic. Like, it'd be criminal, frankly.
I mean, a Sacramento Republic side that has been through a lot. I mean, they were the USL side that was going to go to make it big in MLS. How many years ago?
Like a decade.
And they've been passed over by club after club that have made that jump instead of them.
Remember when they were let in? And they were
and they were then finally let in, and then basically their bid kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
And
the lead investor
were led right back out.
Yeah. Now, reportedly, there were 3 different groups there at that particular match, who are interested in reviving that. And It seems like there might be some steam behind that again as Major League Soccer looks to expand at least a couple more times. It seems like Las Vegas is a shoo-in at this point. But Sacramento lurching themselves back into everyone's consciousness and has re-alerted everyone to the fact that, hey, these guys should totally be in the top flight. Like, we should make that happen. So, yeah, exciting summer of domestic football. But I think before we end this first show of season 10, we need to do winners and wankers.
I'll give my wanker first.
Cool.
My wanker, I mentioned it a little bit ago of the Saudis, having to split their finances between Newcastle and Live Golf, the new break-off golf league. And my wanker goes to a beloved figure now turned heel, and just kind of a real unfortunate turn of events for a well-liked individual. And that's Arlo White is my wanker.
Oh, yeah.
Who is now no longer doing the NBC broadcast. That, by the way, FYI, get ready for that come Saturday, whenever his broadcast was going to be. The A team no longer includes him because as his contract was wrapping up, it was not renewed. And who knows what actually happened here? Word on the street was that NBC said, guess what, bud? If you're doing Live Golf, you don't work for us anymore.
Yeah.
Obviously for multiple reasons, most of which being the fact that NBC is a partner with the PGA Tour as far as broadcasting rights. So they are beholden to that. But they said, yeah, if you're doing that, you're not doing this. So Arlo White left. He is the main broadcaster host for Live Golf, the Saudi-backed sports washing machine that is wrecking the sport of golf as we currently speak.
Yeah. It's just a matter of time before they do the same thing in soccer, by the way.
Like a break-off league where they just spend... I mean, isn't that kind of the unfulfilled concept of like the leagues in like Qatar and stuff like that? Like that there are these like these leagues in Saudi Arabia that like some of those clubs are backed by some crazy money, but just nobody's really wanting to actually go over there and play in this
because who
barely existing league,
freaking desert. But yeah, well, too, like the European Super League, the much mooted and hated and derided, had some backing from that group as well. So I think there's going to be some wins that'll be flirted with here again in the not too distant future as they continue to try to find ways to rinse their reputation. But yeah, it's a great shout. Screw you, Arlo. Yeah.
So I think he's still doing Chicago Fire broadcasts, but who's watching that?
Very few people.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see if I don't know if they write him out of Ted Lasso, which he's also in. Maybe he gets killed off in season 3. Who knows?
Oh, that'd be true.
But yeah, Arlo White kind of jettisoning himself out of the soccer world, really, in a way, by taking taking the money.
Well, I mean,
taking that dirty money.
It's all about the money, right?
That is. Your wanker.
My wanker, I went with a far more obscure wanker this week, but it was just too much to pass up. In the manager of Argentine side Vélez Sarsfield, Alexander Medina, was shown a red card this week for literally fouling an opposing player.
Like when like the time that Jose in a charity match took out Ollie Mers.
Yeah, which that was amazing. I wish that was in a real match because it was an incredible tackle, to be fair.
And Ollie Mers is garbage.
Yeah, well, I mean, he deserved it for sure.
His music sucks.
Yeah, but Medina literally is standing on the touchline, and the opposing team's player comes by, and apparently this guy had just been roasting the outside back on that side all game, and he's like running on the touchline, and the manager literally just goes out and sticks a foot and trips him up, and the guy's instant reaction is like, how did that even happen? Like, he just didn't even know that was within the realm of possibility, and frankly, it's not. But anytime you have a manager who feels the need to kick an opposing team's player in the course of play, that just, for me, is an instant wanker. Like, it's not even debatable.
Yeah. Didn't Woody Hayes do that? Wasn't that like the famous Ohio State kid? He like punched. He took a swing at like a college athlete.
Well, I mean,
the opposing team, right?
I'm thinking of like Bobby Knight throwing the chair out on the court, something along those lines. One of the craziest events I ever saw in my college soccer career was like a collision happened on the touchline, and our player, it was just a pure momentum thing. Like, as they came into each other, they both collapsed into this folding chair that was like 5 feet stupidly off the sideline. And like, no foul was called, and the opposing team's coach just lost his mind and actually threw the chair out onto the field, which he was also sent off for that. And still one of my all-time favorite college soccer memories was watching that coach pick up a metal folding chair and throw it onto the field. Like, it was like, oh my, what's he going to do? Oh my gosh, he threw it on the field. Well, I hope there you just got a red card. And sure enough, Alexander Medina, the manager of Vélez Sarsfield, saw red for kicking a player. So all you future coaches out there, stay clear of that.
Don't commit assault.
It's not advisable. Who's your winner?
My winner is the Lionesses, the England women's national team, doing what the men's team has not been able to do for a bazillion years, it feels like, which is win anything of relevance. And the It's Coming Home, it took the women to finally bring it home. And the Lionesses just winning the Euros, which was, I'll be honest, I think that might be the first time I've really clocked in on the women's Euros. So that's my bad, but it was good.
It was a fantastic. It was
such a good. Yeah, it was so good. It was so good. And they were a side that was very easy to cheer for. And yeah, I mean, obviously you saw that packed out Wembley Stadium, and you see what impact their success is having on women's sports and the game in England. We had the 99s, we had the 99ers, the women's team that won the World Cup there in 99, and everything that kind of, the shockwave effect that had of how it really changed women's sports and women's soccer and everything, all kind of really shot out from that moment. And you see a potential for a lot of similar kind of shockwaves to happen from this moment in England. So super cool. A lot of great players on there. A couple Chelsea women's players, including Fran Kirby, who has been on and off battling health issues, like some pretty serious health issues. She literally, like in April, was sidelined from play and was like had to be on oxygen like 24/7. And there she was starting in the Euros, in the final. That's so just cool, so many great stories.
Yeah. My winner is also not necessarily just the English team, who obviously hats off to them, but also for the way the entire country of England actually embraced not just the women's national team of England, but the entire tournament. Like,
right.
The crowds were fantastic. The pomp and festivities that surrounded the tournament felt like the Euros or, the Men's World Cup. And it really does feel like one of those tide shifting moments where perhaps they're on the cusp of something really big unfolding there. And you hope that that's something that also spills over here a bit more. And, we're starting to see the women's game make some inroads in a way that they haven't in years past. And, this is just further proof that like the mass appeal for the game is there. And now that people just have to capitalize on it.
Are you ready to wake up on Saturday morning and watch some Premier League soccer? Like,
I'm buzzing about it. I'm absolutely buzzing about it. It's felt like a long summer without games, which is odd because, the Women's Euros just finished and, we've had ample amount of, men's World Cup activity, between not World Cup, but men's international friendlies and Nations League and, all sorts of stuff to fill the gap. But I'm fiending for some Premier League football, and I'm excited that it's going to be back this weekend. Yeah,
no, it'll be exciting. It'll be great to have it back. With the start of yet another campaign, another adventure. What all like? It's the build up to a Christmas, and the Christmas is this 8-month thing that is going to have so many ridiculous moments, dumb moments, crazy moments, amazing goals. Like all that awaits us for this season. Like
almost there.
And it's just like, what dumb thing are we going to be laughing about at this point? At some point in the season, what player is going to take off and become that name that we're all talking about that we didn't think we would be at all?
Which fans will punch a horse?
Ooh, I mean, I have my top 3 on that.
I definitely do too. Well, maybe save that for another show.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to see where this season takes us.
Well, we're delighted to have you all along with us once again. If you want to get a hold of us at any point during season 10 or beyond, Jeremy can be found at Jeremy Lance on Twitter. I'm at Wrong Side of Pond. That's the end of the first episode, and we'll be talking to you very soon.
Later.